everyone. One of you has asked me about how to draw tonally, so I'm just going to do a few exercises, and they won't all be drawing strictly speaking, but hopefully it'll be helpful to some of you too. A very messy palette here because I was in the middle of painting when I saw a message, so I've got a few of those, and I'm just going to, all I'm going to do is just choose something randomly so that I can have a go at painting that tonally, for example. Now I'm going to do it very loosely with a big brush, and it's not going to have quite the right colours to start with, but that doesn't really matter because the point is the tone. Okay, so I have a brush here that's got a lot of different colours on it, so it's going to look quite messy. I need to push this away from me a bit so I can see. And I'm just going to do something very big, and obviously this is a light tone generally. This is obviously a very light tone, and the light is coming from this direction, so in here is really dark. Now because this is a yellow jug, and the way I think is I always think in complementaries, this, to me, the shading in here is going to have a little bit of purple in it, or pink. It won't be bright purple, although you certainly could do that. So all I've done at the moment is add, with my very messy palette, I have a little bit of pink in there, I've got some yellow, I've got some blue. I'm going to have to replenish this, but I've also got that dark sort of murky grey. I'm just going to put that in, and all I'm doing is exploring tone. I'm not trying to make a perfect drawing, and then I can see that that is the darkest tone on here, so I would say that's roughly right. It might even be slightly darker. Other areas, so to make that a little bit lighter, obviously all you need to do is add some white or another paler colour that you happen to have on your palette. So that's what I've done. Let's take that hair out of there. And then other dark areas, so blur your eyesight slightly and you can really see where the other dark parts might be. And again, you're not trying to create a beautiful drawing, you're just trying to convey the dimensionality, the dimensionality of this jug. And then of course there's the base that the thing is on. I think you'll agree this is a bit like a watercolour in the sense it's straight onto white paper, and I started with the lightest tone, and then I went to the darkest, and then I've added the mid-tones. There isn't necessarily a specific order, but if this was a prepared canvas, you might want to start with a mid-tone all over it, and then go in with light or dark. It really depends on the way that you like to paint. That's the thing. Okay, so I've got some charcoal here. I've got some, I suppose it's like Conte, a sort of pastel, and I've actually got chalk as well, and I've got pencil, so maybe I'll use a bit of that. I've also got these here, which are Academy Graphite. That's hard, but as you can see, it's very like a pencil. This one is soft, so it's just a bit darker, so you could use something like that. So this is a Da Vinci brand. I've only recently bought those, I've hardly used them at all. So I'm going to try to do the same thing. In fact, no, I'll do something different. I'll do this jug that I have lying around. I really like this shape. And you can see again, it's a very light object. So that is quite challenging to do in black and white terms. I'll get something else that is dark. This fig. Excuse my clothing. I'm just wearing very scruffy stuff. You can see they're very different, but look at the shapes. So similar. That's quite fun. Right, I'm going to have a go at doing that tonally. So I'm going to start off very lightly. In fact, if I start with my hard graphite, then I'll just do a very fine line. If I were painting this, I'd probably have a dark background or mid-tone background, something like that, and then I'd come in with a light white paint. Not pure white, but a light colour over the top. Now, I haven't really concentrated on what angle I'm doing this at. So you need to kind of decide that when you're doing the drawing. So I'm going to come down in my view. I'll just go up here. I haven't actually drawn with this before, and it's quite tricky if you're just using the point. Now that's interesting. Using that edge there actually works really well for shading that tone in. But it's really not easy doing it like this. Maybe I'll do that. Just get a fine line there. So I could just scribble in here. When you're doing tonal exercises, just work quickly. Don't worry about making a perfect drawing. That's probably the darkest point that I can see. And interestingly, the charcoal doesn't want to draw over the top of this graphite, which I never would have anticipated. So if you're going to be drawing with charcoal, obviously everything is going to be much more defined, but that's okay. You know, you're creating a drawing, you're not making a replica of this vessel. You just need to change your pressure. It's all relative. Change your pressure depending on which areas are the darkest and which areas are the lightest. And then this fig is more like this. And thinking about the shape, you know, it's not flat, is it? So I'm just going to shade it like this, where I can see the darkest areas. There's a sort of slight heart shape there. And this is a bit darker here. And then, I'm not sure that you would, my art teacher, I'm pretty sure, said never encouraged smudging at all. Just want to see if this goes over the top. But as you see, I just did that. The lightest area on this fig is just there, the bit that I've left empty. But of course you can use a rubber. I've only got this kind of rubber to highlight areas, but this is a very dark fig, so it's not really important as far as that's concerned. With this, let me just do it with charcoal, make it a bit stronger. It's more like that, really. So these lines I'm doing are not, strictly speaking, tonal lines, of course, but they can be made softer. I'm just wanting to show you how you could do highlights really, but this is not, as I say, this isn't really something that I do myself very often, because I tend to be a painter, and if I draw in my sketchbook, I tend to draw with line work, and then I might just pick up certain areas that are dark, just like I did there. So this is where you do discover your own innate tendencies, I guess, like whether you really want to paint in a tonal way, if that's what is interesting you, or whether it's more colour and shape that are what interests you. But of course, working tonally is what describes shape as much as the outline, or the edge I should say, rather than outline. I don't tend to outline things, although funnily enough the work I've done in the first module for Let's Draw is has been quite linear. So you can see as a drawing it's getting stronger now, and this edge is really quite different to how I drew it. It's there. Now what I can see is you use the negative shape of other things that are behind. There's something much darker behind here that, if you make that dark, will throw this up far more. Now this is really quite light tonally, lighter than it should be, so I'm just going to go over it a bit more boldly, and then I'll use the rubber to come in. I totally forgot to come in again with the rubber, and I've forgotten to shade underneath the fig as well, so you'll have to forgive that. Okay, so the shadow here is really soft, but because this is on white paper, it's really quite similar, so you can't see. And there's the edge of that yellow vessel as well there, which actually throws this edge of the jug into relief. So that's a nice way to deal with that. Planes flying over today. There we are. There's a very quick video which I hope helps.